go.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here with us. Good morning to our alums. We're trying to get the lighting just right so that we can get everyone here. It is a little tricky being that it is a nice sunny day. It makes our video a little tricky. I would ask that our students, if you would move a little closer so that our alums can see you all. If you gentlemen back here don't mind, I appreciate it. If you can see yourself in the screen, then our alums can see you. So, and we don't have to sit at tables, so we can move chairs around. If you wouldn't mind to move to this table, that would be really helpful so that our alums have the opportunity to see you all. We appreciate you all being here with us today. Thank you to our alums who have given their time. I am Faith Craycroft, the director of the Grace Center for Calling and Career. I'm glad you all are here with us today. Today we have alums who are working in different science fields joining us. I'm going to let my colleagues introduce themselves as well, and then we will dive right in and let our alums tell us a little bit about them.
Good morning, everybody. Hi, Miss Ann. Hi, Tyler. Hi, Abby and Christy. So good to see you guys, and thank you again for giving me your time, talent, and treasure. I always say this, but a lot of times we think about treasure, we think about finances, think about giving money and things like that. But what you all are getting ready to do to our students who are here today, that's your treasure. And I thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. And even if you have the opportunity to connect them to an internship or some mentorship or something like that, I definitely would be obliged if you all did that. But thank you so much. My office is always there to help you all. And with that being said, I'm gonna turn it over to Stephanie.
Hi, everybody. My name is Stephanie Hoffman. I'm the program coordinator for the Grace Center. Thank you all for being here again and helping us with our #CareerReady program. And thank you guys for being here too, to listen to our alums. So we'll let you get started.
Great. So I am going to kind of moderate our session today, and I'll just be asking you all questions. So hopefully you guys can see us a little bit. I know it's a little dark in here. We can maybe tweak the lights a little bit if that would be helpful. But we are just going to start based on how I'm seeing you all on my screen. So I've got Tyler, Ann, Abby, and Christy. So if you can just start by doing some introductions, your name, major, when you graduated from Georgetown, and what your current occupation is.
Hi, my name is Tyler Fraley. I graduated from Georgetown in 2010. I was a biology major, and it was current occupation is the last one.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, I'm currently a graduate researcher at Indiana University.
Thanks for being here. Ann? Oh, I can't hear you, Ann. Ann, can you mute? I think you're on mute, Ann.
Sorry, it's Annette.
No problem, Annette. I'm so sorry, Annette.
That's all right. It happens, Ann and Annette. So I'm Annette Gatchett, and I graduated from Georgetown College in 1984. I was an environmental science major, and back then it was about a 5-year-old program. So I was a biological emphasis. And then at that time, you didn't have to have a minor, but I minored in chemistry as well. Currently, I am a senior environmental scientist / manager at a small woman-owned environmental consulting firm called Neptune and Company. Prior to that, I spent 35 years in the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, federal government. You'll hear more about that later.
Thank you, Ann. Abby?
Hi, everyone. My name is Abby Gates. I graduated in 2015. I majored also in environmental science and did not have a minor. And my current occupation is as an epidemiologist with the Centers for Disease Control.
We are so glad you're with us, Abby. I know we had an inquiry in our office, I believe it was over the summer. Do we have any GC grads who are in epidemiology? And we're like, we do. So hopefully we made that connection with you. We're glad you could join us today. And then lastly, Christy.
Hi, I'm Christy Rothwell. I'm a 1996 graduate of Georgetown College. I was a chemistry major, and currently I am vice president of legal intellectual property at Bexion Pharmaceuticals in Covington, Kentucky. Bexion is a small clinical stage biotech company.
Great. All right, so now that we have kind of learned a little bit about you, we will just stay in the same order. But if you have something burning on your heart that you want to respond to another alum's response, you're welcome to do so. Students, we invite you to think about good questions that you can ask our alums. Again, these are great opportunities for you to connect with our alums. So first off, we want to hear a little bit about your Georgetown experience. What was your biggest takeaway or something you learned at Georgetown that has impacted you the most? So Tyler, we'll start with you.
All right, well, so I think for me, the biggest takeaway or impact that I got from Georgetown was really two things. It was the independence that I gained while I was there, just as a person and also academically, but also with the liberal arts, you got to take a lot of classes that you kind of ask yourself, why am I taking this? I'm a biology major. Why do I need X number of semesters of Old Testament or what have you? But the skills that you develop while you're in those actually do carry you through whatever career you end up going into, especially for mine, where it's academic research. It's all looking at what's there, forming arguments, seeing what makes the argument, research skills, all that, and that carries through anywhere. So honestly, as cheesy as it is, being like a commercial for the liberal arts in general, it actually did really help me grow into being more than just being able to recite facts, but put them together, figure out what ties them together, make arguments about them, stuff like that. So.
Thank you for that excellent commercial, Tyler. Just not paid to say those wonderful things about the liberal arts education, but as someone who also had a liberal arts education, it is very true that having this well-rounded education certainly benefits in the future. Annette?
I'm going to go in part of that vein. For me, it was the strong educational background. You don't realize it until you do take some other graduate classes and you find out, wow, I learned that at Georgetown my senior year. You interestingly, that foundation is something that I think has really paid off for me in my career. Also, I think it helps you build confidence. The small liberal arts college, I think, builds that confidence that you're going to need in your career. That also carries you forward. But one really other key piece is this support from the professors that you have there. Their encouragement, their support, you don't get that at large colleges. You get that at Georgetown College. That I still stay in contact with many of the professors there over time. And what that foundation really brings you is the skills and learning how to mentor. So either they're mentoring you as students, but you're going to carry that forward in your career because you're going to be a mentor to others. That's key and important. So I have mentored many younger students, many colleagues, and others that worked for me or with me. But I also have had mentors throughout my career, even at senior management levels. So mentoring is a big deal. And it's something that I think I didn't realize I was learning while I was at Georgetown.
Great words. And we're excited to bring alums more involved in what we're doing so that we can hopefully facilitate some of those mentoring relationships. I know that's something that Olivia and I talk about quite frequently. So thank you for those words. Abby, tell us a little bit about what you took away from your time at Georgetown.
Yeah, so I absolutely agree with Annette and Tyler on those things, but the one that I like to harp on about Georgetown is networking. And it's kind of in the vein of mentoring too, because you'll absolutely, get good mentors that way too. But even just a simple connection with someone, whether accidentally or, through purpose, could come back to help you later on. And every step along my way in my career has been made possible by networking. And like I just said, not always by purpose. Sometimes it was more serendipitous than anything, but definitely make sure, you make every possible use of any networking opportunity you have, because it can really help you out later on. And I know the professors are on you about this, so this isn't new information, but it really goes to help you out in the end, I promise.
Abby, would you share, if you don't mind, and others feel free, since we're kind of on this topic of mentoring and networking, what are some ways that you have found it helpful to build your network or to ask for someone to be a mentor for you? Abby, if you want to start, and then Annette, if you want to chime in, and then anyone else.
Yeah, great question. So when I was at Georgetown, most of those networking opportunities came through internships. And I may talk about this later on, but I was considered myself a professional intern because I think I had 3 different ones during Georgetown, my Georgetown time. So through those, you may not be doing the most glamorous of work, but you are going to meet people. And typically, if you put yourself out there and try to do your best to make a connection, most people are going to be receptive to that. And then also use your professors as well. Absolutely, during my time at Georgetown itself, like my best mentors were my professors. So those are probably my 2 key ways, I would think.
Okay, on the networking front, unlike Abby, I didn't have as much of the networking within Georgetown, although I had connections through my parents, and I had a great internship at EPA while I was at Georgetown for 2 summers, ended up then working there. But networking for me really happened once I entered the workforce. And again, just getting to know people or doing that. And I cannot tell you, I'm behind Abby 110%. Networking, you must do. It's an absolute. I was going to hit this a little later, but that is my job now. That is what I do after 35 years at EPA, although I did a lot of networking there. I'm now a consultant. That is what I do. That's what I have to do 24/7 is go back and use my networks, build new networks. It's absolutely critical in your career, especially today. Critical.
Thank you both. Okay, and lastly, Christy, would you want to share about what you took away from your time at Georgetown?
Yeah, I mean, I think I could reiterate what everyone else has already said. I did not appreciate the liberal arts aspect of Georgetown until I switched career paths. I'll talk more about that later, but that's really important, I think, for any career. And also the professors and the people at Georgetown that just encourage you to, spread your wings and expand into areas that you didn't necessarily think you would go.
Wonderful. Do any of our students here have any questions about something that these alums have shared so far? We are next going to get into a little bit more of your professional journey. So we'll start with Tyler again. Tell us a little bit about your professional and personal path. I always like to say, that first job out, I think that's where most of our students' mind is at, right? That first job out, was that a home run, or did we have some challenges? Were there some personal things that also, we know that the personal and professional worlds are so tightly interwound and integrated. Were there things personally that helped, or maybe were a struggle that you would be willing to share? So Tyler, we'll start with you.
So when I graduated from Georgetown, I went straight to graduate school at the University of Louisville, and I was studying the ecology of animal behavior with individual and groups, and how that related to how mating and disease were related through behavior. And I had this advisor who basically just kind of had a lab and threw students in it and said, figure it out, find what you like to do and do it. And that freedom is great until you realize that what you want to do, you can't really do there. So I was talking to my committee and mentioned, they asked me, well, what do you want to do when you get out of here? And I said, this whole parasite host, disease coevolution microbiology, I was hoping to switch to that. And they said, well, that's a bit of a jump to do going between PhD and postdoc. So they worked with me to get me to, because the only class I'd had in micro up to that point had been Dr. Johnson's micro class, my second to last semester at Georgetown. So you know how much I probably paid attention to that. But I ended up doing a master's at U of L Med School. So that was a very abrupt career change, talking about that. And that's another thing where being comfortable being thrown into something that you are completely unfamiliar with. Georgetown really helped me build those skills. And so after I got my master's, I reapplied to PhD programs, and now I'm in a plant pathogen lab at IU. And so I went from fish to oral bacteria to now fungi, that different rust fungi that feed on primarily wheat and barley. And so that's sort of like every step along the way there is an abrupt change, but also, it's like every step along the way I was getting closer to what I need to be doing too. Like, it would be unreasonable, I think, for me to expect 22-year-old me to know exactly what I wanted to be doing the rest of my life. But I was prepared to figure that out whenever I graduated. But that's really my path. It's not direct by any means, but I am where I need to be. So
Thank you for sharing, and I hope everyone heard that it would be unreasonable to know exactly what you're going to do for your life at 22. So you may be younger than 22 and feeling some of those pressures. So take that wisdom for what it's worth from Tyler. Really quickly, before we transition to our next alum, how many of you all are in a science-related field of some sorts? Two? Am I missing? Okay. So 2 hands of students that are in a science-related field. What are some other majors that are represented? If you have no idea, that's also very okay. Psychology, sociology, social sciences, communication, accounting. So we're kind of all in that social science or hard science realm, it seems. So just wanted to kind of get the temperature of the room, and I'm sorry I didn't do that a little bit earlier. And Annette, tell us a little bit about your professional journey. You told us, what you're doing now, consulting work, but where did things start out for you?
Yes, and mine's a little broader over time, and I've had a lot of shift and change. And you're right. I don't expect you to know what you want to do now coming out. But what you just raised your hands helps me also think about my path. So fresh out of school, no jobs. It was 1984. Unlike today, it was very difficult. And so I went out as a wet bench chemist. And as I said, I had a minor in chemistry. Really wasn't enough, but I learned that, number one, I hated it. I did not want to stand in a bench behind, samples and running machinery all day long, 24/7. I hated it, but it's one of the best experiences I ever had, and I use it every day. So that was good. Got a job then at EPA, spent 35 years there, but that career path had lots of different job activities in it. Because of it being the Environmental Protection Agency, you have all kinds of options once you're in. The first part of my career spent in human health risk assessment, which is where I did my internship. And it was okay. I liked it well enough. Really needed a master's or PhD to do it, but I did it. And then I jumped into more of the engineering side. Now, much like Tyler was saying, I'd never had an engineering class in my life, but it turns out it was one of the best career and jobs that I had in my entire time at EPA. And I spent 15 years doing that and loved it. And I would call or say that I have a master's or a PhD in testing and evaluating innovative treatment technologies to clean up hazardous waste sites, hands down. that moved me into a lot of senior management positions. So guess what? Yeah, you know your science. Yeah, you have to have the science hard core understanding of that. But then you're in a management role. It's all about people. It's all about budget. It's all about management. It's all about leadership. So the rest of my career was pretty much in that. And I didn't get to have as much fun out in the field. However, a large part of my career allowed me to also spend time across the US and travel to various states and help clean up Superfund sites, traveled internationally. I've been on European Union advisory boards for projects. So, you know, those hard jobs in the beginning of, no, that's not exactly what I want to do. I'm going to try something else. Yes, that's what I want to do, or try something else. You just have to keep trying. You'll find it, but you just have to keep trying different things until you find that right fit.
Thank you for sharing, and what wonderful advice. Just keep swimming, right? Our good friend from Disney would say, just keep swimming. So we do have a few folks who are joining us on Facebook, so welcome. If you have any questions for our alum, we invite you to just add that in the comment box, and my colleague Stephanie will make sure that we get that to our alums. Abby, would you like to share a little bit? I know you said you're a professional intern, but let's hear more about your story.
Sure. So I'll start with a disclaimer that my journey is very all over the place. So let's make it confusing, but I'll do my best. If it were a diagram, it would look like a spider web. So my first job out was with a local nonprofit there in Lexington called the Equine Land Conservation Resource. And it's a small nonprofit that works to conserve land that's used for horses. And this is tied back to, it was one of the places that I interned while I was at Georgetown. I was in the Equine Scholars Program at Georgetown. So, you know, did all the horse things. And I did that internship as a requirement for that program. I made many other connections through that internship that got me to where I am now, even in an entirely different field. But that was my first job out of Georgetown. It just, you know, so happened that they were able to hire me about the time that I was graduating. I was an operations manager there, so I did a lot of, you know, logistical kinds of things, as well as writing and environmental consulting, since that was what my degree was in. And then I was there about 3 years. And then about that time was, you know, trying to figure out what I wanted to do, if I wanted to pursue that path, or grad school had always kind of been in the back of my mind. When I was graduating, I knew like that's not what I wanted to do at that time. I was tired and I wanted to stay in Lexington for a little bit longer, but knew I probably wouldn't be going to grad school in the area. So that's what led me to keeping that job for a while. And then later on, when I was thinking grad school, I started going back to thinking, you know, public health and epidemiology. And this was something that had been sort of cemented in the back of my mind, probably in high school and then definitely into college. But when I was in high school and going into college, I didn't think I could quote unquote do science. And like, I just didn't think I was, you know, intelligent or smart enough, basically. But got to Georgetown and realized that it was probably mostly my foundation from high school that was leading to that. So once I started taking, you know, the science classes at Georgetown, I realized, okay, I can do this. Through the internship at ELCR, where I got my first job, you know, I met connections with other equine organizations. Another one that I did an internship with is Equestrian Events Incorporated, which plans Rolex, the big eventing horse show there in Lexington. And I interned them for 3 years. I kept going back, and that was because the connections were so good. And not only was I making connections in the horse world, which helped me in a different internship later on, I made a connection with a public health epidemiologist that worked in Switzerland. And through that connection, really learned that, okay, this field is something I really am interested in. And I think at that point, that was probably my first real tangible connection to someone in the field, other than, you know, reading and that kind of thing. The third internship I had was with Kentucky Equine Research, and that was for GC PALS, which is now called Science Honors. And that showed me I did not want to work with horses professionally, which was another thing I thought I might wanted to do. But learned through that internship I didn't, that I just want to keep horses as a hobby, which was great to learn. You don't want to put a lot of effort into that one if that's not where you're going to stay. But that internship itself too, you know, got me published and started me off on the science route itself too. So all that is to say that everything was connected in ways I never would have expected or planned, but it all worked out. And after the 3 years at ELCR, I started, you know, planning to go back to grad school, and I was able to reach back to, you know, all these connections to get, you know, letters of recommendation and advice and all that kind of thing to get going towards grad school. And then at that point, applied to a few and wound up going to Emory University, the Rollins School of Public Health, for a master's. I think I'll stop there.
Thank you so much for sharing. And I often say that any decision-making process, but particularly figuring out what you want to do with the rest of your life, is not a straight line. It is that meme of all the squiggly lines that eventually get you to where you are going to go. So thank you for sharing some of your squiggly lines with this, Abby. And I think just as if you've heard me speak before, students, you know, I always talk about the importance of experiential education and getting your hands and feet in there and understanding whether it's through an internship or being a part of a program of distinction. My colleague Stephanie actually runs our Equine Scholars Program, Abby. And so I know we have some equine scholars in the room today. So that is a huge way. If you're involved in a POD and the things that you're learning in those experiences are also huge to help you in that decision-making process. So, all right, Christy, I'm going to turn it over to you and then we'll open it up for any questions.
Okay. So my path was also not a straight line like everyone else. I went from Georgetown College to Georgetown University, graduate program in chemistry. Decided I didn't want to do hardcore chemistry. I wanted to be more involved in medicine, and was able to switch to a biomedical science program in the medical school at Georgetown University. I get that question a lot. How does Georgetown College compare to Georgetown University? They're not at all similar. Very different, but a great experience there too. And then I went to Boston for a postdoc at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, which is part of Harvard's medical school, and was there for a little over a year and decided I didn't want to do academic research. Again, back to the networking, your networks and meeting people in different areas is critical. You never know when you're going to want to switch directions or need advice or recommendations or whatever. So maintain all those connections that you're making now and in the future. I met a lady who was a PhD JD and asked if I'd ever thought about going to law school. It's like, no way. Had I ever asked myself at your point, Georgetown College, if I would end up in law school, it would have been no way. I was a scientist, but she, told me about patent law and how you use your science background in law and business. So I worked as a technical specialist for a while at a law firm in Boston and decided that I really loved it. So it kind of merged a lot of different areas. So you get to work with the scientists who are doing the really cool science, and you get to help protect that and hopefully get it into the market and commercialized at some point in the future. So from there, I decided, well, I'm doing the same job as the attorneys. So I decided to go to law school. At the time, my husband was starting a biotech company out of the University of Pittsburgh. So I moved to Pittsburgh and went to law school. I've worked in law firms. I've worked in large pharma companies and small companies. Now I'm at a small startup company. All have their pros and cons, but it was a path I didn't expect, but I ended up in a career that I love.
Wonderful. Thank you. What an interesting journey all of you have had. I love it. And Christy, you just led us right into my next question that's tied to this, is what you would like to tell these students, or what you would have told yourself when you were their age, sitting in a room here on campus, listening to alums. Like, what is maybe some advice you would give your college age self? And Tyler, we'll start with you.
I'm assuming you mean like professional advice and not like who you shouldn't date and stuff like that.
More professional, but if there's something, personal that also is appropriate to share, we would welcome that also.
All right. Well, I think professionally, I was actually a lot like Abby, where I went into college thinking that I couldn't do a lot of the stuff that I end up doing every day now. I didn't think that I was good at all, or that I had any potential or ability at all to be able to do chemistry, any math beyond sort of your high school level geometry and algebra 2, and just a whole list of things that I had basically convinced myself that I was awful at and would never be good at, and that scene of things. The big one being like being able to memorize or remember anything. And I had trouble with that in high school, but I'd also just like not had great experiences with it. And Georgetown really helped me towards the end figure out, oh, actually I can catch on to math pretty quickly. It was just the way it was taught to me in high school. Or this didn't happen until I was getting my master's at the University of Louisville, the med school, but I actually can take a class that's a semester long of nothing but memorize. I took my first immunology class there, and that is nothing but memorizing pathway after pathway after pathway. But I learned that I could do it. And so what I would tell myself at 18 going into college beyond anything else is like, stop telling yourself that you can't do this stuff just because you don't blink and it happens, right? Like, just actually, if you just took the time, took a deep breath, calmed down and focused on it, you will be just fine. But you need to take the time, take a deep breath, calm down and focus on it. And so that's really it. I would probably smack myself and tell myself not to stop being so negative, and to stop assuming that I can't do something.
Great advice. Maybe you have kind of entering that first round of exams. If anyone has an exam later today or this week, maybe you need to take Tyler's advice to heart or tell yourself you can do it. Annette, what about you? What would you have told your college-aged self?
2 things. First one, take more risks. Don't be afraid to try new things, which is kind of the Tyler piece. You've got to not be afraid to try new things, branch out. If you're in the science field, get the advanced degree. Kicking myself over and over and over, had opportunities, one thing gets in the way, kids, different job, whatever. Get the advanced degree if you can. If you're in the science field, that's important. The next thing is, I think the importance of both what I'm going to call hard skills and soft skills. You've been hearing lots and lots of us talk about what I'm going to call the soft skills: networking, mentoring, just that whole social, using different tools and mechanisms on the social scale to get those interactions and to build those networks. Multitasking. If you're good at multitasking, you're going to have no problem in your career. You're going to have to learn to do that, as well as speaking and presenting. All of these are the soft skills. The hard skills you've got. Georgetown is great for your education and all of those experiences with your professors and getting the hardcore education. But it's the soft skills that I think never knew or just didn't think to take stock in those until much later.
Great words of wisdom. Thank you. Abby?
Yeah, definitely echo all of those things from Annette. For me, I think the one thing would sort of be in the lane of what Tyler shared, in that I would like to tell myself it's going to be okay. And I know everyone is telling you that now, that things are going to work out, but it's really hard to believe in the moment. But eventually you'll be, where we are now at some point, and be looking back with, a much kinder outlook. And things are going to work out. They may not work out the way you think they would. But it's probably going to be an equally good place to be. If you told me, 7 years ago that I would be working at CDC later on, I would have called you a liar, because I could not at that point have imagined where those dots would connect or how they would connect. So I think that's something to keep in mind, because it's very easy to compare yourself to others and compare yourself to, where you think you should be at any given point. But that's not helpful, typically speaking, and especially, while we're dealing with all the changes due to the pandemic and things are entirely different than they were before. So I think my advice there would to just be keep on keeping on and trust that it's going to be okay. As long as you put the effort there, it's going to work out.
Christy?
Yeah, I think I would tell myself to not stress so much. I think I felt at the time that I had to plan my whole career and felt like it was sort of locked down, or I needed to lock it down. And my biggest advice would be not to feel that stress. It's okay to change directions and figure out you want to go in a different one, or you don't like something, the education you've received, or you can go into graduate school. You can go in lots of different directions. So don't stress.
Great advice. Great advice. Any questions for our alums? Students, if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand, and if you would just stand so that they can maybe see you.
I have a question for our students. Yeah. Okay, raise your hand if you have a mentor. Like, raise them high, so don't be stretch out the elbow. Okay, so we have, so there's one student, to our alumni, on the call, we have one student here who says they have a mentor. That's something that was a common thing throughout what you all said, mentorship, networking, and things like that. Can one of you or all of you talk about what to look for in a mentor and how to seek out that relationship?
I'll go first. Different way. I think different ways for mentoring. I would have in my career very formal mentors. I had a job, an organization that really believed in mentoring, especially in management jobs or other. But so you were assigned mentors, and they're always, in that case, formal mentors outside of your organization. You want someone that is a sounding board, someone that isn't in the organization that may have, not knowingly, kind of have ways of steering you that maybe shouldn't be steered. So having someone from the outside looking in, but understand your organization if you're within an organization. Now, that's one mentor. Second mentor might not be formal mentors, but they're mentors that you come across through your networking, much like Abby talks about. You never know. And when you find one that you feel like that you can connect with, that has experience and that's willing to be that sounding board, and you don't want them telling you what to do, but advising you or listening to you or helping you lay out pros and cons of where you want your career to go, that's the kind of mentors you want to seek. I don't know, Abby, what you think, or others. Christy, if you've had some.
Yeah, so I mean, I've had the formal ones that you're assigned to, particularly at a law firm or whatever. I found those to be a little more difficult. They're just sort of checking the boxes. The best mentors that I had were people that I met at different meetings or functions or parties or through friends or whatever, that you just connect with. And as you talk, you find you have things in common, like the patent attorney that I met that changed the course of my career. We met over a coffee after a conference, and she took an interest, and we connected and got along well. And she was willing to offer that advice. Just because I reminded her of her at that point in her career. So I think, you know, the mentor, it could come from anywhere, formal or informal, but typically I think the best ones are the people you just connect with.
I think kind of building off of that with the people you connect with, you know, different people. I've been in, you know, university graduate programs and stuff for a while, and I've seen a lot of different combinations of students and mentors, and not every mentoring style is for every person. And so finding a good match so that it's productive for you. But I would definitely stress beyond that, like the skills that make someone successful aren't the same skills that make someone good at mentoring. And so those might line up together, and that's great. But and I think you see this a lot with sort of the old guard in academic research, where yes, they're well published, yes, they're very smart, but a lot of them are jerks, for lack of a better word. And so it's, you know, so like, for example, whenever I showed up to Georgetown, I connected with Dr. Griffith because he was doing work that I was interested in. He had just started teaching there, I think, the year before, and he was trying to get some research up and running, and I was interested in getting research up and running just to see what it was like. And he was like a good mentor. Like he took an active interest in my development and my success, which isn't necessarily always the case. And so look for personality trait, not just like someone who say, oh, well, I like where they wound up, I want to be there too, but also look at like, are they actually someone who's going to be helpful to get you there? And so that comes through meeting a lot of people, making a lot of connections and building a lot of relationships to see which ones, you know, turn into mentorships or what have you.
Great, all wonderful advice and great question, Olivia. Thank you. Abby, anything you want to add on to this? To the icing on the cake.
Yeah.
This
Yeah, I would harp on what everyone has said, but also when you try to make a connection and it doesn't quite work out, don't take that personally, because it's likely that it's one of the people that, you know, Tyler was talking about, that's not something they have time for, not interested, one of those kind of things. It's probably not about you. But the other end of that is that if you do find someone that takes an interest in you and then tries to help you, cling on to them for all you can. You know, maybe it might turn out they're not working necessarily in the field you are interested in or something like that, where it may not work otherwise. But if they take an active interest in you, cling on to that, because they're going to be worth more than their weight in gold for sure.
great advice. Any questions or any thoughts from our students?
So I just wanted to kind of sum that up, you know, and it's sort of what I was trying to say with, you know, within your organization, there are going to be mentors that you'll think they're a mentor. They're not really a mentor. They're guiding you down a pathway based on their own interests. So it's the caution piece, but all in all, mentoring is absolutely wonderful, but making that right connection for the right reasons with the right people, I think is your takeaway.
Absolutely. And to your earlier advice, Anne, of taking risks, Annette, sorry, you know, sometimes we have to take those risks and we're not sure. Sometimes, you know, it is as simple as saying like, hey, I'm looking for a mentor. It seems like we have, you know, you're at coffee with someone and you're like, wow, we're really kind of hitting it off. Would you be interested in mentoring me? Could we talk on the phone once a month? You know, I have a mentor and sometimes it's once a month, sometimes it's once a semester, right? It's just the way that things go in our professional world working in higher ed. But I know that if I have something going on personally or professionally that I need some insight in, I can send her a text and we'll get on a phone call soon, right? So it's just having those people in your back pocket that have been there, you know, consistently over your career. So that's really, really great advice. I know Olivia has one question she always likes to ask our alums, so I'm going to let her ask this as our final question. But thank you all so much for this wonderful advice. It's been really, really powerful, and I'm glad that we are streaming this to Facebook, so those who couldn't be with us live today will also have the opportunity to hear your wise words. Olivia.
And definitely want to echo Faith. Thank you all again. So I do like to ask this question anytime we have alum either on campus speaking to students or of course virtually as you all are today. We had a group of students in the room. I don't know them all, but I know that they're probably pretty involved in campus. We have some athletes in the room. Yeah, okay. We have some folks who are in programs of distinction. Okay, very good, very good. We have anybody who is in a fraternity or sorority. Mr. Randy Alpha, I see you over there. So you all are pretty involved students, and I think that's the nature of the Georgetown College experience. So with in saying all that, do you all mind to share a favorite Georgetown College memory? It could be of something you were involved in, a funny story. I often love to hear the funny stories, but I do ask that you make sure that they're appropriate. But if they flirt on the line of inappropriate, that's okay too. But one by one, I don't know who wants to go first. If you all don't mind to share a favorite Georgetown College story or moment, that would be wonderful.
I can start if everyone else needs time to think. I had one immediately come to mind, and that was in, I can't remember which class it was, but it was, I think it was with Dr. Kopp. I think it was one of the ecology classes when we were out in the stream trying to sample critters. And at the time, I hope this has changed, but at the time, the hip waders that the department had were not good. Most of them had holes in them. And so we all piled into the storeroom in the back to go on this field trip and to get our hip waders. And I grabbed two, and my friend, also an environmental science major that was next to me, she grabs two, and I think we each had, both a right and both a left or something like that, because it happened that she was looking for another right boot. And at that point I'd put mine on and could tell only one of mine was wet, because of course they'd been used by a class previously, so they were wet already on the inside if they had holes in them. But one of them was not wet, so I gave her the one that was wet. And to say I feel bad about duping her, but I was one of the very few people that got through that field trip with two dry hip waders. But in the end, I wandered in too deep in the stream, and my hip waders filled up with water anyways. So I got paid back in the end. But that's definitely one of my favorite memories from Georgetown. It's just those, fun little quirky things that you look back on.
I love it. Thank you for sharing.
Okay, I got a couple, but mine are not going towards sort of in the classroom kinds of things. So I was in a sorority. I was a Phi Mu. My husband was a PhD or PHA. Our dorms were close by each other, and we got engaged our senior year. And I don't believe that any of you do those stakeouts anymore, where they had box springs with nothing on them. They were all metal. So when you were engaged and they find out about it, obviously they, at some point in the semester in the fraternities, would gather the groom-to-be, unbeknownst to him, tie them down on one of these metal box springs, strip them down to their boxers, parade them around the quad, take black markers, mark them all up, carrots, celery, and a few things down their pants. And then they would haul you in front of the sorority house, where they would save slop buckets from the cafeteria for weeks on end. Well, my husband had always said this was never going to happen to him. He was never going to get engaged while he was at Georgetown, because they were never going to stake him out. So I never dreamed I would get an engagement ring, because he was not going to go through this process. He broke down, gave me a ring, right? So everyone knew this. So the Phytas at that time used to have a pig roast every fall as everybody would come back. Well, they saved the pig head, put it in a bucket, saved it for 4 weeks. They wanted it really nice and ripe. Paraded him around, dumped the slop buckets, and they put that pig's head on his chest. You would put some cloth over their nose with perfume, because it's bad smell. And then there's pictures of him. This is notorious. these pictures and what happened to him is still something talked about in the PHA house at Georgetown College. So that was my memory of how bad that stakeout was around the campus.
Miss Ann, I don't know if you heard any of the reactions in here. That folks
I
are
did.
trying to realize that happened. I know I am too.
Oh, it does happen still?
Oh, no. Not that we know of. Not that we know of. No. But that's one of the best engagement stories I've heard.
Well, and you're allowed to cut them up, or I was allowed to run out and then you untie them and the dorm is locked. So the PHA dorm was locked for 10 to 15 minutes. So the person that slopped gets to chase after everybody after, and they get to pick a sacrifice. They take the sacrifice and throw them on top of them to rub the stuff. And then you get to chase everybody around for like 15 minutes to slop them if you can. It was fun.
This is my first time hearing this. I had no idea. That's wow. How about that, you all? Y'all sound like fun. Okay. Thank you for sharing that, Miss Annette. Hey, tell Mr. Gasha, he's a trooper for that. He is.
So I guess mine involved the PHAs as well, but it's not nearly as bad. I never joined a house, but I always sort of dropped in briefly on the rush week parties because there was free food. And I would always try to duck out before they actually started talking about the fraternity, just because I had other things I wanted to do. My freshman year, I go to the PHA house and they've got this table of buckets of chicken wings just sort of lined up next to the back door there, I guess like their informal lobby. And so I look at the buckets and I look around and I was like, I could just grab one of these and walk out the back door and no one would notice. I might care, I don't care. So I grabbed it, walked out the back door, and it was perfectly fine. So sophomore year, I did the same thing. And then junior year, I was studying abroad. And by my senior year, they had to start posting guards because someone, I guess, either other people noticed the same thing, or I became well known as someone who would just show up, take an armful of food and not break stride and just walk right out the door. So they had their two biggest people at either door. So it's not nearly as fun as Annette's story, but it kind of goes along with Abby's, where it's sort of the little quirky things that happen to you while you're at school that oddly enough stick with you a lot longer than other things. Like I don't remember Songfest at all, but I do remember that.
I love it. I'm not mad at you, brother. You get the food. Thank you, Tyler, for sharing. I appreciate it. Last but certainly not least.
I haven't come up with one particular story, and I didn't join a sorority, but I lived with the same group of girls all through college in Pierce Hall. And there were just lots of little quirky things that you remember living with the same group of people and different things that you did. Like Tyler said, you may not remember one particular event that was sort of Georgetown College event, but all those little things are definitely good memories when you meet up with those friends or think back on it.
Absolutely. Lifelong sisterhoods and brotherhoods, right?
Definitely.
Thank you, Christy, for sharing. Thank you all for sharing with us today. Just a part of the reason why you love Georgetown. Definitely we appreciate it. And with that,
Well, again, thank you. And thank you to our students for joining us. I do have the Nexus code. So if you want to get out your phones to enter that, and so we have a few folks still on Facebook. So Stephanie's going to enter that. I will repeat it twice because I know you're probably still getting, wait to see that I have some folks on the page to enter that code before I get it out. Okay, I see a few heads up. So it is 533-860. Again, that is 533-860. And this will be on the Graves Center Facebook page. I want to do a couple quick plugs. Since we talked so much about networking and mentoring today, right outside of this room, there is a table set up. We are having, how many of you all are juniors or seniors? Okay, we are having a networking event next week that Alumni Relations and the Graves Center are partnering with. It is going to be at the conference center, so we have a speaker and several alums. So to get a head start on some of this networking and mentoring, we would invite you to sign up. It is Nexus credit approved. If you need a Nexus credit, you are welcome to sign up. We also have Spotlight Career Fair, which is on February 24th, so week after next. So go to the networking event, practice networking, and then go to the career fair. This is a career fair that will be held at Keeneland with other private schools in the state. So there are over 60, almost 70 employers that will be there. So if you're looking for summer internship, this is really open to any grade level. But we would ask when you register that you upload whatever copy of your current resume that you have on file so that we can give you some feedback before you go to the fair. We will be providing transportation from the Student Center. So the fair is a Thursday. It is from 1:30 to 5:30, and we'll be providing a shuttle transportation that day, leaving the Student Center from 1 to 4. And then the last shuttle will return at 5:30. So don't let transportation be a barrier to you. And there is Nexus credit for that event as well. So if you have questions, Rachel is sitting for a couple more minutes and then I'll be out there at the table. There's a QR code you can snag to register for the networking event. And if you want to go ahead and snag the one for the career fair, you can do so, but it does ask that you upload your resume. So you'll want to make sure that you have that, but you can at least hang on to the link. Okay. Thank you all for being here, and thank you to our alums. We appreciate you and your time so much. Can I get all of our students to come up front, and we're going to do a quick picture, if that's okay. All right. All right, I am going to stop streaming.